Hello, best ever listeners. This is Travis Watts, your host of the Actively Passive Show. Theo is out today on a break, so you got me. And I figured I'd do a really short solo episode on something that kind of baffles me that we've never covered on the show. And it just felt right to do it as a solo episode, and I'll tell you why here in a minute. Topic is the 5 best tips for investor relations. So, at the end of the day, yes, I'm a full-time passive investor. That has to do with my investing preference of where I place capital. But on the active side, I am director of investor relations. And prior to doing that, I created an investor relations platform for a syndication group. And prior to that, I worked investor relations with Fidelity Investments. So investor relations is really kind of my world, at least on the active side. So I feel like this could be a really powerful, beneficial episode for both passive and active investors. And I'll tell you why. If you are an active investor, we'll start with that. It's pretty obvious. You're either going to have to be investor relations yourself, if you're going to be a one-man or one-woman show, or you're going to have to hire someone for investor relations. So this, without a doubt, will be helpful for those folks. And on the passive side, you need to know what type of group you're working with. As a passive investor, who is the communication source? Are you talking directly to the general partners? Are you talking to an investor relations rep? How many do they have? What questions might you want to ask them? And, are they kind of in the know? Are they kind of following some of these best practices, so to speak? So this is just my take on it, by the way. Speaking with thousands of investors, this is just kind of a quick 5 best practice recap, in my opinion. So certainly not to say this is all you need to do. And there's certainly a lot more we could talk about, but I'm going to keep the episode short. And that is the topic of today. So I'm just going to knock into it here right off the bat with the takeaways. The first thing I would say to active and passive investors in relation to investor relations, make sure the investor relations rep is discussing the good and the bad in the conversation, because it's all too easy for us. And of course, I've been guilty of this. Everybody has, to speak about the positives and the best case scenarios. And wow, what a strong past performance track record we have, blah, blah, blah. Everything you read and see obviously is going to show you the highlights of the best, right? And it's going to try to paint the picture for what things could be. But make sure, if the investor relations rep is not bringing it up on their own, that you bring it up. Have you had a deal gone bad? What if interest rates double? What if blah, blah, blah? And make sure that you have those conversations and that, there is an answer to them. I'm not saying there's a right and a wrong response to those, just that, they've thought it through and that they're willing to talk about it and not shy away from it. You can create a lot of skepticism among investors if all you ever do is talk about the positives. And, some of the first podcasts I ever did where I was a guest speaker talking about passive investing was just that. It was, oh my gosh, it's great. And it's this, and it's a benefit, and it's a pro. And then, eventually I did that a couple episodes, and one of the hosts stopped me and says, wait a minute. It can't all be good. It can't just all be rainbows and butterflies here. Tell us the real story. And it really got me thinking, that's true. I really need to give the other side of the coin in fairness, to promote transparency, right? So that's number one. Discuss the good and the bad. Listen for that, look for that, do that if you're in that kind of role, okay? Number 2, be visible. I would say it's not a great idea if you're active and you're new to this space to just go out and start trying to raise capital and promote a deal if you have no presence on social media, you have no website, you have no blog, you have no podcast, you have no thought leadership platform. If somebody goes to Google, types in your name and nothing comes up, I would say that's probably a mistake, because investors, limited partners like myself, we do due diligence. We look up firms, we look up people, we're trying to read between the lines, figure out who is this person. I like to watch people do speaking presentations and talk to an audience so I can try to read their character. So you got to get out there. You got to be visible. And also on that note, I know there's a lot of people and or firms in the syndication space that maybe they prefer one outlet, one social media outlet. Maybe they're very heavy on Facebook. They're posting every single day on Facebook. Everything's on Facebook. Their blogs on Facebook, their videos on Facebook. But what about all the investors who are on LinkedIn and they don't do Facebook? What about all the people watching YouTube that don't go to Facebook? So I would say this: put a little bit of content on as many outlets as you can versus putting 1,000 posts on only one outlet. That would be my take on that. So be visible. You'd be surprised. I get people reaching out all the time. Oh, I saw this Instagram post you put up. That was like a year ago, or whatever it was. Or I heard you on so-and-so's podcast, and that was, not even a recent thing. So be visible, be a guest on people's podcasts, maybe launch your own podcast. It really depends on you, your strengths, your time commitment, et cetera, but be visible nonetheless. Cool. All right. Number 3, professionalism. So a lot of newer groups reach out to me because now I'm kind of known as the passive investor guy in the space. So syndication groups that are newer will reach out and say, hey, can you take a look at our website, or can you take a look at our slide deck or our company prospectus or our deal overview? Tell me, just what are your thoughts from a limited partner investor? They want to make sure, obviously, they're putting out something that's going to be marketable, that's going to be competitive, and they're looking for me to tell them, red flags. And I'm happy to do this stuff, by the way. I think it's great. And I appreciate everyone who has reached out to do that. It always gets back to professionalism, though. I'm telling you, almost everything I look at, especially from newer operators, I find typos, glitches, generic Google pictures that are blurry in there. It looks like oftentimes it was made on just PowerPoint. And that can be fine if it's made on PowerPoint, but use professional templates, professional looking, fonts, and just don't get too weird with it. and the average overview for a deal is probably, 30 to 60 pages long. I can't tell you how many have been sent to me that are 5 pages. Here's our company, here's our deal, here's the data, here's the contact page. Don't do that. Be professional. Look at some groups that are doing it successfully in the industry and mimic to an extent what they're doing. Look at their templates and their professionalism. Also, when you have calls with investors, if you're going to be an investor relations rep or anything even related, what you say and how you say it matters a lot. And first impressions, the old gold standard, they go a long way. So when I do calls with investors, I'm wearing, if you guys are tuning in right now on YouTube, you can see me, but I'm usually wearing a button-up shirt or maybe a sports coat, and I got my hair done and stuff. I don't have chaos happening in the background. Use a green screen or something if you have to. Buy a professional microphone. But I'm telling you, I've showed up on these calls and I've had people, apologize for showing up in their t-shirt and shorts, because I'm I wouldn't say I'm dressed up, but I'm professionally set. I got a lighting kit going, all this kind of stuff. So you don't have to take it too far. You don't have to be on in your tuxedo or whatever, taking calls, but be industry professional, I would say. Any communication you have, anything you write or post online, your videos, etc. Remember your demographic, which is what we're going to talk about next. Who are you really presenting to? High net worth, high income individuals. Don't you think those individuals most often, they they buy into that, right? I mean, they're a doctor, so they have to wear, professional looking, wardrobe. They have to speak professionally. They don't have typos and errors all around their office and on their paperwork. So they look for these things, so you don't want to be a red flag to them. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about target audience. Funny story, years ago, I was just getting into public speaking, and I wanted to start with some smaller events. Had a buddy in Orlando, and he was doing a local real estate meetup group. And I said, great, real estate investors, Orlando, that's where I live. And so I said, okay, let me help you with it. Let me kind of co-sponsor, I'll co-speak, I'll co-promote, let's do this. So I can't tell you how much time I put into this. It was quite a bit, but I marketed this event. We got a whole bunch of people to fill seats. We found a venue, we rented things out, we brought in food and water, etc. I made a PowerPoint presentation, polished it off, dressed up nicely, showed up, had rehearsed this thing 100 times, came in and literally I killed it. It was great. It was a great presentation, beginning to end, audience is clapping. It was a great deal. And I thought, man, this is awesome. I crushed it. Well, only one problem. Not one person in that audience was an accredited investor, as it turns out. As we mingled afterwards and we had our list of attendees, not one person was accredited. And what I was ultimately trying to do is network with accredited investors. So lesson being, know who your audience is, know what they do, where they hang out, what they like, and get in front of that audience the right way. It saves you so much time and energy. And I see so many ads, for syndication stuff. And I just think, man, they're kind of missing the target with the message. So maybe hire someone, a consultant, or a marketing director, or whatever's in your budget. If nothing else, when you have an idea that you're going to post or something you're about to put a lot of time into, run it by 3, 4, 5 people in your network and just see if they think that's a good idea. Maybe you could do that for free. So number 5, wrapping up here, is respond quickly. There's something I pride myself on. It's something I pride other people on. I very much respect when I'm an investor and I'm looking to invest in someone's deal. I send an email because let's say they just had a webinar last night, and the next morning I say, okay, watch the webinar. Here's my 3 questions. And I get a response back, or I get a phone call, or that's another thing. If I make the phone call, do they answer their phone? Okay. If they don't, fine. Do they call me back same day? No. Next day? No. A week later? You're looking for these things as red flags as a passive investor. And if you're active, I can't tell you how important it is. There's a fundamental concept here, and it's that, it doesn't matter whether you are ready to pitch your deal to somebody or you're ready to do your presentation. What matters is when the customer is ready, when the investor decides, yep, I'm going to put 100K into this deal, and then they send you an email or a call, you better be on it. That's money burning a hole in their pocket. And if you're not going to be responsive or give them what they need, they're just going to find another deal and park the capital there and say, sorry, missed out this time, maybe next time. And that's a huge deal. So, even if you prefer working, Monday through Friday or whatever, I would say be open on the weekends to text and emails, especially those urgent, like, hey, I'm looking to invest. I just have a couple questions, or, where do I send my funds? If you get that on a Friday, don't put it off till Monday. Respond to that as fast as you can. It's something that it's a form of professionalism. First of all, it's unprofessional to blow people off and not respond. It is professional to get back with people in a timely manner. So that's pretty much the 5 recaps. If I were to pick 5 that I feel are very important, that have proven themselves over and over to me. And, the last thing I'd say kind of in closing and in recap is just be adaptable. I mean, this goes for anything in life, but, adapt, rapid changes in today's world with technology and new social media platforms coming out. COVID happened. You've got to be adaptable. Before COVID, I was going to in-person, face-to-face conferences and real estate meetups nationwide. That was like my whole gig, man. That was like week to week. That's what I did. And all of a sudden, no conferences, no face-to-face. I had to be adaptable. I had to pivot. When one door closes, you have to pivot and look for another door. So something to keep in mind. One of my mentors years ago told me, double down on what works. So as you're experimenting with all these things, you're posting on Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn and BiggerPockets. If something starts working, if you start getting a response out of it, double down, post more there. Don't exclusively go to it like we talked about. Still post a little everywhere, but double down on what's working. So appreciate you guys tuning in. Hopefully you found that helpful. Again, this Travis Actively Passive show. Theo will be back next week. This was just kind of a bye week, so I thought I'd do this solo episode. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you have any questions, send them to theo@joefairless.com. We'll see you next time.